My opinion on this measurement space, and I felt this way since the very first day that I kind of came into this industry, and I was hearing marketers say, this is my source of truth. And it kind of bothered me to my core a little bit. And to be fully honest with you, statistically, the source of truth is the marketer. It's the human, right? It's a team of marketers. It's the creatives. It's that collective effort.
Michael, thank you for being on the show.
Good to see you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to chat about all things Prescient and MMM today. First question, really high level. I saw recently that you drove 3,026% growth in 2023. That's a crazy number. How did you do it?
A lot of early learnings from our initial client base, right? We were coming out of a beta, and shout out to some of our early clients that just gave us rigorous feedback on, halo effects, which I'm sure we'll start talking about later today, but also our media optimization platform. Once that was released, essentially allowing an MMM to create a budget optimization at the campaign level under a minute, 45 seconds usually, with the flexibility to go in and select specific campaigns based off of historical performance, using other platforms to triangulate kind of which campaigns they would want to optimize for. There was just coming up on the conference circuit. So I went out to the SendLane conference. I did a little roadshow because I didn't come from the D2C space. And so I was still kind of a new guy. Nobody knew who we were. The team was small. And I feel like there's a lot of great thought leaders in the space that are very vocal about how they're approaching measurement. And, shout out to the homies over at Hexclad and some of our earlier clients in that space. There was a little bit of a virality moment for us where we were getting reached out. I heard about you in the Slack channel. I heard about this group chat. And we also did a lot of, some content content marketing. We started doing some cold outreach, but it was really kind of a little bit of a network effect of, the D2C ecosystem tied to a product that was just right at the right time where people were like, hey, I want to start scaling my top of funnel spend. I want to be able to do it in a way where I can onboard fast. And I want to be able to, get very granular and fast model reads. And so it was a collective group of a collective consortment of different actions that all led together to a great year.
That's awesome. It's interesting. Speed to value is always a important value prop for measurement providers. And I'm in the process of onboarding an MMM right now. There's always that balancing act of speed to value and speed to impact versus we want to take our time and get things right and make sure the model is delivering the right results. How do you think about that dichotomy?
Yeah, I think it's such a great question. And something we get asked about is well, you can onboard really fast, you ingest all the data. I think that's now started becoming a commodity, if you will, just with data pipelines making it the kind of point and click, right? Ingest all that historical data. Then the question is how can your model run in hours, right? And still be confident that the models were properly trained. I can't, without going too deep into it, I would say, imagine a net. You have one net and there's a whole bunch of things falling through that net, right? It's in all that time it's going to take for, just whatever item it is to surface through the net and then fall into this little bucket, right? But imagine if you had something that had 4 different nets that broke these things into little pieces, right? And we're just able to do it faster. So we've created a suite of models that break apart all of the data into little models that all talk to each other. So essentially, we've just dissected the data faster versus using one model. We use a suite of models that all talk to each other that do a fantastic job of, I'd say that's where our strongest suite is, not only the speed, but obviously there's an element of how we think about backtesting things, right? Against that historical actuals. How do you pick up on seasonal trends? How do you pick up on random events, virality moments, holidays? The statistical relationship between your spend and your revenue across D2C, Amazon, retail. I got really lucky. My co-founder is the Michael Jordan of research science in this field. And we've been researching this model completely from scratch since 2020. So we've had a lot of time to research it and make it better.
It's good timing too. My LinkedIn feed is full of chatter and lots of folks in the space now. And it's a problem. I think post iOS 14.5, everyone's talking about it. We'll get into kind of the nuances of Prescient and how you're differentiated in this space. But I think it's probably helpful context for folks to hear about where you got started. I know that you've shared the Spotify story on a few different podcasts in different places, but it's a great story. So would love for you to kind of talk about Spotify and how Prescient got built back in 2020.
You know, it's with just like the the growth and the new employees and just the day to day, you feel so far removed of like the early beginnings. And so any opportunity to share that story is something that's near and dear to my heart. So I appreciate you asking the question, is what I'm saying. I was at IBM, Oracle, doing very large scale machine learning deployment. And long story short is when COVID hit, touring went away, and I was building this tour prediction model. And the focus shifted over to people are going to be in their house, they're going to be streaming music. Now, traditionally, there wasn't a bunch of ads that were being pumped to drive the awareness of a song, but since everybody's home, right, they need to like double down on the revenue stream that's, they have in front of them. One of my advisors, Adam Parnas, he was the former global head of publishing at Spotify. I was like, dude, what am I going to do? Touring went away. And he says, well, have you ever heard of Google Analytics? It sits behind a website, right? And it's a very important data point for a lot of businesses in general. Well, Spotify and Apple don't have a Google Analytics behind them. There's no last click. So, and if you think about what we call like the heterogeneity, like the variety of types of data that's associated to a musician like Cardi B around their awareness is crazy big, right? They're doing so much organic stuff. Virality is happening, and now they're layering on paid spend. And then you have like, well, is the beats per second different than this one? Like there's a lot of like variables in order to try to figure out like, is a song good or not, but also external factors. And so I met my co-founder, Cody. As I mentioned, he's been researching these LTV models, and he's a R&D a researcher at his core versus more of a data scientist, that's what made it largely unique. Anyways, we got data. How do you make a label exec confident that the measurement that you're doing across their paid media spend is accurate enough for them to feel confident to make adjustments to their spend for upcoming album and track releases? So a lot of that is done through backtesting. And so we got Roddy Ricch and Hey Boogie and Cardi B and about 10 artists, and we started backtesting against their historical songs, right? Doing it out of sample, and then being able to also explain and quantify the impact of these organic events. And Cardi B had a song, there was a dance to it that went viral. And then there was another song where kids were recording their parents' reaction on TikTok when they heard the song. And we were able to essentially start looking at like video, sound views, video creations on time series data, and quantify the impact of how those virality moments impacted the streams alongside their spend using a ROAS calculation based off of stream count versus the spend. Backtesting 93 to 98% accurate. And it got really real. We were just taking screenshots, putting it on a Word doc, and going back and presenting to the label executives of like, hey, here's how well we backtested. Here was the measurement. Next, so it's the same thing as kind of we're doing today. And then the next question was, if we had that same budget across those same channels, and we're thinking about things like diminishing returns, saturation plots, these and all these different factors, right? If we found the sweet spot, how many more incremental streams could she have gotten? And I'll never forget, it was February of 2021. They took our spend recommendation, how to reallocate the mix. I won't share which channels it were, but we have some confidence scores. We're 97% sure. Like if you're going to take a bet on two guys in a digital garage, like this is the one to take. And we ended up predicting that at 96.3% accurate. And that was our moment. Apple announced iOS 14.5 the very next month. And we said, which industry should we go to? Worked in music. Do we want to go into pharma? Do you want to go into financial services? And sure enough, our first stop has been the consumer space. And it's a very fun story. But that's where we got to start building research of the model a long time ago.
I think I know the song that you're referencing as well. I wonder, within the space of MMM providers, I kind of have you pegged as an MMM more for e-commerce and retail folks. You have a product that's focused on Amazon that is pretty differentiated from others in the space. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. How would you categorize Prescient today and where you want to go?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I think I view us as more of a media optimization platform that, it is fueled by an MMM that is very granular. It's very fast. It uses, I would say, state-of-the-art math for the reliability of, like I said, the only thing that matters in MMM is the math, right? It's purely statistical models. And, I think what differentiates us is the speed, the granularity, the ability to onboard fast, the models train fast, the dashboard is very intuitive. You can answer questions like, well, how did my CTV campaign impact my D2C revenue and my Amazon revenue over the last 7 days, right? It's very granular. It's very fast. But we use that MMM to inform on how to optimize their media mixes. And then now we're coming out with our retail model. Super excited about how that's looking and how that's shaping up.
Yeah. When you think about the granularity at which you can get results, there's obviously statistical significance in a lot of this stuff. I'm going through the process right now where we had to remove certain spend from our model because there just wasn't enough there for the models to get a read. That's on the kind of spend side. On the revenue and customer acquisition side, I think it can get pretty complex as you think about e-commerce brands that might have thousands, if not millions of different SKUs, all with different ways of measuring revenue. How do you kind of approach that challenge?
I think that's a great question. You have brands that are, like our client Brewmate right here, and it's one price point, and then you have like, I don't know, a pen right here is another price point. Consideration cycles of, buying a Hexclad pan versus buying a pencil are going to impact attribution windows, like the buying cycles of these products, which impact the way that you think about the measurement, right? Some brands are optimizing for new customers. Some brands are optimizing for, a blended ROAS. Our models are able to, during the onboarding or the learning phase that we do in hours, right? I think we'll get it down to even less than that, is we pick up on things of like, what is that buying cycle of the product? What is the frequencies of these orders, right? Is there tons of SKUs coming through here? Is it more of a single SKU? We have a company called Aviron that's like a competitor of a Peloton, right? Where you're having maybe a one big SKU and some accessories on top of that. And so that's where the math comes in. You have to learn the ecosystem of the brand through their data. We do a really good job of that.
Do you have a strong opinion on what folks should be looking at? For example, there's some that will say, you really want to optimize towards marginal ROAS. There's others that say, hey, we'll take what you can get, whatever your KPI is, we'll work backwards from there. Do you have a strong perspective on that? Or, maybe that's a weird position for you to be in, right? Sometimes you're like, when you're getting started, the clients come in and they're like, we want to do this. And you're like, hey, we'll try to make it work.
Well, I think it's like right now we have the flexibility to measure and optimize towards the traditional KPIs that brand is, looking to optimize towards. I have my opinions on things and we have strategic conversations, but at the end of the day, like I like to stay in my lane and trust that the marketers and the executives at these brands, have a better pulse on that than me, where I come in and help with saying, how do you think about leveraging your platform? How does it work? And really giving them the confidence to know the decisions they're going to make are going to help drive profitability.
In the conversations that you have with new and existing clients, what's your sense for the kind of, percentage of them that are using an MMM, using some sort of incrementality testing, versus this is completely new and foreign to them?
I'm seeing more, such a good question. I've initially, earlier on, I saw people coming in and being like, hey, I heard about like, my boss says we need to look into MMM. I don't know anything about it. Right. But then, you talk to folks like, Brian Cano from Nude. This dude's like, knows every single thing about every sort of model that could impact the type of MMM and ask all the right questions. And so I've seen more and more people getting more exposure and more understanding of the value of MMM. My opinion on this measurement space, and I felt this way since the very first day that I kind of came into this industry, and I was hearing marketers say, this is my source of truth. And it kind of bothered me to my core a little bit. And to be fully honest with you, like statistically, like the source of truth is the marketer. It's the human, right? It's a team of marketers. It's the creators. It's that collective effort. There's a variety of data points, right? Or forms of measurement that are all trying to tell a different story about, different parts of how you do, like holdouts. How are you measuring, more click-based channels? How are you trying to get a more holistic view? And what I'm seeing, I'd say, absolutely, I would say, I don't want to spill the beans on any of the brands out there, but like open up their strategies. But I would say 70% or more have at least an MTA, or I'm a huge fan of what's going on in the incrementality space. I think what the folks at our house are doing or Measured are doing, like they're serious players in incrementality, and like aligning that with an MMM, doing calibrations, model validations is, I think, kind of a textbook example. Cam from Hexclad, I can publicly say it because he posted on LinkedIn about it, but like, he was looking at our MMM and we're talking about, scaling connected TV, and then using that and essentially forecasting out like what that spend thresholds would be. And then they used House to kind of validate it. And encouragingly, excitingly was like, the guys over at House, like the data showed that it worked really well. I know Cody from Jones Road has done this with some YouTube tests with us as well. That's, I think, a textbook way of doing it, but there's a blend of incrementality plus MTA for brands that are, I'd say, very data curious and are capitalized enough to implement all three softwares.
Yeah, it's really funny how quickly this has evolved, even in the kind of couple years, 4 years that you've been building this out and that trajectory. I do wonder, if it is kind of 0 to 100 in the sense that prior to iOS 14.5, we really weren't thinking about this stuff. Maybe marketers were doing a little bit of it. And now it is this kind of pressure. We need to look into it. CMOs are telling their direct reports, we need to have these conversations. I think about, I'm kind of obsessed with like productivity and how I'm spending my time. And I think about within my, work week, what are the categories of the things that I'm doing? And sometimes I wonder if I've over-indexed towards the measurement space and over-analyzing the data, thinking through this very specifically versus just being a marketer and trying to, build great creative, create great campaigns, create a great mix, build a brand. What do you think about that mix, right? Because when you're doing something, when you're measuring and you're looking at the data, that is taking up your time. And I feel like sometimes I can spend too much time there.
If you were to answer in 3 seconds intuitively, like, yes, now am I spending too much time doing measurement stuff? Is that how you're feeling right now?
That's what I'm feeling. But I feel like I had to go over that peak to then work my way back. And I think that after I've spent enough time kind of working within MMM and working within Triangulation, I can work my way back because I have more conviction in my philosophy on how to be a marketer and how to kind of build a brand using kind of a full funnel mix.
I think in my side, if I was to correlate that over to here, like I'm a first time founder, right? We raised, I think, 18 million, never had a board, right? Do I over index on like how I think about how I spend my time to like make sure my relationship with the board is really good? Because that's really important for you guys is, hey, am I an expert and have I done MMM a whole bunch of times? Have I done triangulation? It's getting to the point where it's part of your workflow and you feel comfortable making decisions on that. I feel like once that's stabilized, you can go back and start focusing on other areas where it's like, I want to get more stabilized. But I think it's like this constant flow of sharpening your pencil, if you will. Coming back, right? These MMM providers are coming out with, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be coming out with some like very new things in the MMM world that perhaps if you're using that saying, all right, well, I need to really buckle down, I need to partner up with Prescient and I need to like further understand this and maybe start dedicate some more of that time. But it's interesting to hear your perspective of like categorically, how do I think about a lot? Because measurement and creative, right? They're kind of hand in hand right there. Where are you doubling down on? For me, it's like, am I focusing on culture? Is it working with the board? Are we thinking about, new marketing strategies? I think it's natural for all of us humans to feel that way sometimes.
Sure. And the reality is there is no balance. There's just going back and forth between the spectrum. But yeah, I think like from my perspective, going into incrementality testing over the past 2.5 years, and now I've realized a few things. One is there's a lot of spend cannibalization happening in the DR channels, and that we're addicted to last click. You can't be completely obsessed with that. 2, as a result, we need to optimize more into kind of like a full funnel strategy and spend more in awareness marketing. And then 3 is like, what is the mix of that and how do these all interact with each other? So there's that part, which is this like traditional kind of like full funnel marketing mix. Then there's the other part where AI kind of plays a role, which is like, we need personalization and we actually have to create ads for every single unique variation of a persona who could potentially be interested in our products. And so now I'm kind of moving away from the measurement space and thinking more about that kind of dichotomy as well.
Well, how do you think it's a question we get asked all the time. It's like, hey, we get very granular at the campaign level, but there's this whole other world around like creatives, right? And so traditionally MMMs, you'll see it done at the channel level. And then the question was always like, well, what about my tactics? What about my campaigns, right? And then, you give them a cookie. It's like, all right, well, what about my creative level? So I'm curious, like, are you doing how does triangulation of creative fit into, I don't know if it'd be called even a triangulation anymore, if there's a fourth one in there, but like, how does that fit into, I guess, how you're thinking about measurement tied to the creative side?
It's tough. It's almost like I'm looking at the incrementality of things on more of a channel or campaign level, and then I'm making some assumptions about the creative within that campaign. And how incremental that might be. I think, and that's, to take that tactically, right? It might be that Facebook direct response campaigns with, subpar creative that's more simplistic drive decent incrementality, and then investing more in quality brand creative, reduce CPAs, but improve the incrementality. And so that's okay. One thing that I'm doing, and I'd be interested to hear if other marketers other marketers that you talk about are doing this. I am actively deploying budget away from low CPA attributed campaigns that have better incrementality into higher CPA campaigns with better incrementality, right? So and that's been a conversation even that, my CMO is asking about on a weekly basis. Like, this thing had a $50 CPA and you want to put it more into the $80 CPA. And I'm like, yes, but we've run all these incrementality tests and we're seeing that this $80 CPA is actually a little bit better.
I guess, are you guys so I guess the source of truth when you're thinking about how you guys are allocating the budget is, and I'm not saying that that's your only source of truth, but like a key data point, you're saying you're looking at this incrementality data and it's telling you one thing, maybe the other platforms are telling you another thing. It's like really driving those. See, that is textbook usage of like how to leverage an incrementality tool and make decisions off of that, right? I think that the additional triangulation can come from that is like, that incrementality tool is going to give you kind of a point and read at that time, and then layering that in with the MMM, especially one like Prescience, where it's like very rapid ongoing, and it's allowing you to run these optimizations based off of the data you're getting from incrementality data, and saying, all right, well, what is the sweet spot I should be spending, right, on these campaigns? And I think that's like a textbook way of, and maybe you're taking some of the MTA data because it's a more of a click-based channel, direct response channel, and blending it all together. So I think when you think of triangulation, it just doesn't always have to be like, oh, I'm calibrating an MMM or I'm doing some sort of hold up to validate it. Is, hey, I'm taking incrementality data, I'm using that to run simulations with an MMM as well.
100%. Yeah. And I also think I work against the challenge of getting data, with things like MMM or incrementality tests that you do less frequently. You run the thing, you get the result, and then in your head, you think, okay, that is what this thing is. And you might make several changes in the months ahead that could completely change those results. But, and depending on I think this is a big problem with larger companies too. Imagine, a CMO that hears about an MMM readout once a quarter. It says Facebook's bad. You do all these things. And then they're like, wait, why are we spending time on Facebook? That's bad. It's bad. So yeah, as much as triangulation, and like, I agree with you. And I think it's like a really cool quote. I forget how you framed it, but like the marketer is kind of the decisioning factor. We also have biases as well.
We're all humans, right? And like, you just hit such a chord with me on like the larger, one of the biggest, and I'm going to take us off a little quick tangent here, but like it's anecdotally what we were describing is like, we started working with like, above the $1 billion revenue range, and the dynamic of how they think about media planning and last click and the decisions of, how we're going to make changes. They're so used to like an MMM running every year or every quarter. So the channel level, they're really tied down into last click, and then they start onboarding and like the flow of information that was going back up the chain. It was like almost analysis paralysis. It's like, whoa. Like, what are you guys telling me all this stuff for? We're supposed to be talking about this in 3 months from now. So one of the earlier lessons that we had was like, you need to understand your audience and really talk to the brand about what are their workflows, right? How are they making decisions today? Because if they're implementing an MMM now, they're clearly either using maybe a last click, they're using existing MTA, they're using incrementality, and now you're going to layer in this MMM. What are you trying to accomplish with this MMM? Do you know, what would you do with an MMM that would be able to run every day? You'll see saturation plots move and, on a daily basis based off of testing these spends. And so, yeah, it's as we start to go up market, it's then a much different theme than some of these brands that are just like, I love working with these brands. They're ripping and running. They're like, in the platform all the time, making decisions. And like, I can see it in the data. It's really cool to see the next evolution of these sort of MMMs compared to like more like traditional media planning.
Yeah. I wonder, and the measurement side of marketing is kind of the thing that I'm interested in, but I think I'm more passionate about the creative. And I think about like, what is the emotions associated with a given brand? How are we converting a customer? When I think about, if I was hired as a growth marketer, or I guess a demand gen marketer for an MMM tool, like what would I create? I think I would create a series of ads that were just like moments showing the emotion of logging into the platform and being like, oh shit. And this completely changed my worldview. So let me ask you, like, what are some of those moments that you've seen marketers come in? Like, imagine someone logging into Prescient and, having that, like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, there was he's a good buddy of my guy named Ryan Sliper. He was formerly at Good American. He was a CRO, and he has been in the space for a long time, up on that very enterprise executive side, or like up market brand, and then, more down to the D2C. And I told him, I was like, we'll onboard you in under 20 minutes. He was like, BS, like it's not going to happen. Right. And so he set a stopwatch, they timed it, it was 16 minutes. And I was like, it was in a moment of like, wow, like I've been using MMMs my whole career. Right. But I've been using I'm not going to say they were using Nielsen, but like think about a traditional Nielsen MMM and the implementation time. So that was like one of those really big moments. Another one, I'll take it back with Cam from Hexclad. When I think about like the aha of like a textbook triangulation, it was just perfectly done, right? They used the MTA, they used the MMM, and then they used the incrementality to validate it. And now when they think about like taking recommendations, the marketers just want to feel confident at the end of the day. And the moment is when people would hit me up and say like, I know it's a statistical model, but like it passes my sniff test. I feel more confident to go take a bet on scaling my top funnel. Another one would be a brand. Well, I think we'll come out their use case next week, so I'm going to hold back the name of the brand to that. I respect them, but amazing brand. They onboarded May 1st, and it was Shopify, GA, Meta, Google, TikTok, Snapchat, Amazon ads. That was May 1st, and then June 11th they onboarded CTV. The couple next week they onboarded StackAdapt, and then they onboarded another CTV provider and Linear. And that was my moment. I was like, okay, right? They want to go, they're growing, they want to scale top of funnel. And now they feel confident a month after using the solution to be like, all right, I can double down on that. I've become good buddies with Cody over at Jones Road, and like he'll send me some messages being like talking about some of the stuff he's doing on YouTube. And like if I'm getting a recommendation from us, like he instinctively starts to trust it now as he's starting to use some of these holdout tests, that he talked about house. So yeah, those have been some of the moments of like our value prop of like speed to time online, using triangulation, and then some of the Amazon halo effects. A good buddy of Nick Osborne over at Catalina Crunch, I just came out of the use case with them. It's like feeling more confident, being able to identify an individual campaign, like where should I be doubling down on, and what is that halo effect over to Amazon, and then starting to see some of the results from there.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of been, we always optimize on a North Star to the aggregate data. How much did we spend? How much customers did we get? How much revenue did we get? Right. And so, but then on the channel level, we use all these different measurement sources to make decisions. And there's this kind of fear associated with, okay, let's just say our CAC is $200 and we're going to allocate away from Facebook that says we're driving a 150 CPA into TV that says we're driving 350. And then you do an incrementality test or an MMM to give you the confidence to make that move. You make that move, and then CAC goes down, and you're like, oh, okay, I got it now.
You're more confident when you're more confident. Like, if I go to the doctor's office and I have like a really bad knee, and like he's fixed my knee before, he's fixed something else for me before, like I'm going to feel more confident to go back to this doctor, right? Like to get a recommendation on what that sort of treatment should be. And with anything in this world, it always like, I'm a huge believer in like, setting expectation avoids confusion and disappointment. Like if you set the right expectation with the measurement and the data and the triangulation, like the expectation is that you can trust this, right? When people trust this, they inherently feel more confident. When they feel more confident, they do better at their job. When people do better at their jobs, you have businesses grow. SaaS companies have higher retention. Everybody's starting to win. But and a philosophy of mine is like expectation is the most important thing. And for us, the expectation is delivered based off of trusted insights.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of our initial conversation. You were just talking about the hunger and the ambition that you have, and wanting to grow this business and wanting to be successful. I saw the news on LinkedIn a couple months ago that you raised $10 million Series A, and I was like, that's amazing. I'm excited to see what you're going to do with it. Final question as we wrap up the conversation here. How do you think about deploying that budget and that capital that you raised?
Yeah. So we grew from, I think, 9 to just under 30 now, hired some remarkable talent to listen. We will, the way we told the investors from day one, and we will always be an R&D first company, right? We're researchers at our core. We question the methodologies of existing research papers. We create our own, and that'll never stop, right? We've proved this we have more doubling down that we're doing on the existing product, omni-channel. Just got a really nice retail contract, our first one. So we'll start doubling down into retail, but looking into cross-vertical expansion, right? It's worked in music. It was always a plan was to come to, we started to stop in D2C, go to retail, and we got our eyes set on some adjacent verticals where there's some pretty large media budgets as well. But likely do another fundraising round. We'll see when the timing of that is. But right now it's important just to double down and making sure that our existing clients are getting as much value as they can from the platform, and, partner up with folks like over at AppLovin. And, we have a whole bunch of brands that are just like on AppLovin, they're scaling AppLovin. That's one of the more exciting times. I know it's not the future, but I had to call that out as like, our MMM is live with this integration, and we're seeing some brands just get some incredible results by, leveraging our MMM and scaling that channel while it's still hot and early. So a lot of focus. Important to stay here now.
Exciting stuff. Anything else you'd like to add?
Why did you start the podcast?
Easy answer. Just a way to interview people like yourself, get in the door with smart people. And for anybody listen, I'm not a VP. I'm getting promoted right now to be a manager, which is kind of cool. Having some direct reports, which is exciting. Thanks, man. But, I feel I get a sense of imposter syndrome when I'm reaching out to founders and CEOs. And I think it's really cool that folks like yourself are willing to say yes and meet with myself. And that's why I do it. It's been really fun.
I would say that I've started to do more and more of these, and well-polished questions were asked, thoughtful, good delivery is good. Congrats on the promotion. And, to close it out is, for anybody that's interested in MMM, that just wants to learn about it. As you can tell, I don't come up for breath often. I really love to talk. And so if anybody wants to nerd out on our MMM in general, measurement in general, you can hit me up at mike@prescientai.com. So thank you guys. Appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed the chat, and hopefully we'll get to do it again in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike.
You got it, bud. See ya.